Michelle Obama says, until recently, I've mourned the dimming of that hope. And maybe you've experienced the same feelings. Is that a pit in my stomach? A palpable sense of dread about the future? Now, look, Michelle Obama has well-documented anxiety problems. Very interesting. When they are not in control of political power,
What do you see happening next?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I have made this recommendation. I think that all of these people that are involved, starting with Obama down, they all ought to have their passports revoked. And people need to be checking private airplanes and airfields for anybody trying to abscond the country and get the heck out of Dodge here. So that's number one.
Two grown men are leaning in, as if they were about to offer Coca-Cola the recipe on live television. With the exception of Charlie Kirk and General Flynn, they're surprised by Michelle Obama. It's a mix of political drama, improv comedy, and fever dream. They speak with the confidence of men who have just figured out the Da Vinci Code by using a coloring book. The best part is that they have no idea how ridiculous they sound.
this is how arrogant Joy Reid and Ketanji Brown Jackson, Michelle Obama, and Sheila Jackson Lee are. They're so narcissistic. This is persuasive.
I do think that just as was done to Trump when they raided his home at Mar-a-Lago, because they thought that they planted evidence there in that case. But I do think that what the DOJ should be considering, if not getting ready to conduct, is a raid of Barack Obama's home up there at Kalorama in Washington, D.C., where he's been since he physically left the White House. He's been running the White House all during the Biden regime. And I do think that there's some other places that need to be raided where...
If you like it, kindly subscribe to the channel. You'll be surprised at how much it helps. Michelle Obama, America's self-styled Kale Queen, has once again become the focus of political gossip. General Flynn and Charlie Kirk have somehow decided that they are the perfect investigative team the world has never needed. It's like pairing a motivational speaker with a person who thinks history lessons are a deep state operation. Even if it doesn't make sense, you can't take your eyes off it. The giant expose is that Michelle's existence seems to be a taxpayer-funded health retreat disguised as a self-help podcast.
Being at the DNC, this for them is church. For them, this was a religious experience.
Till recently, I have mourned the dimming of that hope. And maybe you've experienced the same feelings, that deep pit in my stomach, a palpable sense of dread about the future.
So dark. And now she's saying, now I have hope because of Kamala Harris, the apostle.
They are presenting her as the silent puppet master in yoga pants who is allegedly pulling strings from behind the scenes, akin to a kombucha-fueled Bond villain. Consider it. Instead of missile control panels, there would be a private underground layer with Peloton bikes, gluten-free snack shops, and a climate-controlled garden for organic food in an emergency. Disregard political ideology. Her eats hummus before they can spell it.
Is, to me, as far as I'm concerned, he is anti-American. He is a socialist, if you will. He is so aligned with the radicalized Islamic community global, and that's a large community.
The message they're trying to get across is that Michelle has always been more than just the First Lady. She is the covert CEO of the American lifestyle company. You know what the sword is. Before you know it, you're spending $12 on a smoothie in a mason jar that you didn't even want after eating properly one day and drinking more water the next. It makes a subtle but enduring impression, much like an incessant pop-up ad.
Early this morning on my X post, basically I laid back out the plan. It was 8 years of Obama, 8 years of Hillary. Steve, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. And so once, enter summer of 2015 and so on and so forth, and Donald J. Trump wins the election, as you well know, in November of 2016, then, all that the gates of hell were unleashed by Obama.
She was well portrayed by Charlie Kirk, who never lets reality deter him, as the Beyoncé of bureaucratic power running a backstage empire while wearing a naive smile in public. He envisions her installing covert kale dispensers in government buildings and requiring federal employees to write letters of thanks. However, Flynn went one step farther and developed a theory that links Michelle's influence to each major event that has transpired over the last 10 years. Being health concerned, this study goes beyond a Whole Foods price tag. They make it seem like ever since she left the White House, Hillary has been building a whole shadow empire.
In fact, if we would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama, Sheila Jackson Lee, and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for it. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise.
Book agreements include not just books, but also secret recruiting manuals for the next wave of smoothie-selling influencers. Netflix's overtly coded marketing turns unaware people into quinoa evangelists by teaching them to accept more vegetable-forward plot lines, public speaking tours, and a valid excuse to travel the country. Next is her so-called fashion diplomacy. Remember the colorful cardigans, fitting jackets, and sleeveless dresses? Each outfit, according to this information, was a psychological trick to assist the nation in embracing the concept of aspirational moderation.
That's what we now know. Now it's not just Obama. Of course, it goes back to the summer of 2016. And actually learning from this actually goes back to late probably December 2015 timeframe. So what I want people to know from this is that there are going to be other names that have never been really exposed. People over at the National Security Agency, others inside of the FBI, others in the CIA that are going to be in big.
Don't laugh. Indeed, Flynn conveyed the idea that Michelle's attire was a crucial part of a larger plan to shape American society. It's because they think she's getting ready for a power battle. Flynn claims that Michelle's public persona is really a trial run for something bigger. It's the type of vague warning that lets him take credit later, whether it happens or not. Kirk even went so far as to claim that the continuous media focus on her lifestyle is a prelude to another Obama presidency. Because it seems that when you start an organic food garden, you are immediately considered for president. What truly choked me on my coffee was how they portrayed Michelle's actions as a kind of economic sabotage.
Flynn, the guy who pled guilty to lying to the FBI, is now saying the FBI should raid Obama's house and anyone else involved in the Russiagate conspiracy. Look at this. He says all of these people involved with Obama should have their homes raided and their passports revoked. Absolute flight. Raid Obama's mansion immediately. There is a lot of evidence there. He's been running the White House through the...
Her face is probably somewhere in the middle of a corkboard, surrounded by pictures of apples, water bottles, and confused lunch ladies. Next is the media apparatus. In this version, Michelle does more than just conduct interviews. She fires them like directed missiles. Each children's book reading, photo opportunity, and discussion event is a strategically scheduled PR effort designed to keep her in the spotlight. Indeed, it was Flynn who connected her backyard tomato plants to global trade policy.
I'd note on Michelle Obama, can we just note how overrated she is? And like all the hype around Michelle Obama, she run for office and she's just, I don't want to get into aesthetics of all of it, but the presentation of her podcast.
As if each basil leaf she plants is a component of a bigger strategy to lower agricultural costs worldwide. Wearing a cardigan the whole time, which is dangerous in the dark but innocuous on the outside. Whether or not you believe a word of it, it's funny. And one of Kirk and Flynn's best skills is turning a mundane scenario into an engrossing thriller suitable for Netflix. They immediately moved into what I can only assume is Michelle Obama's social media domination idea, as if fashion scoops and kale conspiracies weren't enough. Every time she posts a casual picture of herself with a smoothie, it seems to be a covert operation.
So hard early on because Charlie, I'll pat myself on the back here. There's not been a national security advisor to the United States of America with my background. Not one. Now, I mean, going back to Henry Kissinger, who I met three times to do kind of a handoff.
Jack, you were also very cautious on Russia. You see, they needed to take you out because they wanted to get to a war against Russia, and you had a much more cautious, realistic, and restrained approach to.
Don't just look at me. I'm living my best life right now. I'm not sure whether they were being serious or if they just skipped lunch. According to Kirk, grades for American kids will soon be based more on how many grams of sugar they consume each week than on how well they do in math or science. Somewhere in this fever dream, there's probably a mandatory yoga test for high school graduates. Naturally, they were compelled to depict her book tours as something worse.
She's just whining all the time and she's complaining. Right, again, I'm not trying to look at people's looks. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying the whole aura of it, to use a Gen Z term, is terrible.
Kirk's eyes almost lit up as he said that Michelle's fitness efforts were allegedly less about residents' health and more about getting them ready for future mobilization. In his mind, every push-up contest and physical education class was really only preparatory training for a grassroots army of very fit, salad-fueled operatives ready to execute her ambitious plan. If you have ever completed a plank as directed by Michelle, congratulations. It was the creation of a propaganda channel. At this point, their evidence was starting to sound like the plot of a mid-budget science fiction movie where the aliens are Zumba instructors.
Got whistleblowers coming out of the woodwork, and we're funneling it into the right governmental offices to do the right things. And these people are busted. And so Jim Comey, that's why I said earlier, Jim, if you get this message, start thinking about what you're about, because you're gonna give up some of your freedom. You're gonna go to jail. You must go to jail because of what you did. Maybe they'll cut you a little bit of a deal, and they'll put you in a soft.
Everything from her podcast to her gardening tips was reframed as a calculated move in a convoluted takeover attempt. The more they spoke, the more it seemed like they were her to the status of America's most powerful unelected person. Kirk seems to have spent years building an unbreakable shield of optimism, volunteerism, and veggie jokes. The implication was that anybody who ventured to oppose her would end up looking like a cartoon villain who hates kids and dogs.
Just kind of her lamenting, and then she's obviously there's problems with her daughters and all that. I don't want to get into that, but we built up Michelle Obama as going to be the hardest person ever to run against. Her book sold so many copies, and my goodness, you want to talk about the most overrated political hype of a generation? It would go to Michelle.
As if the absurdity wasn't already at its height, they continued by implying that Michelle's real skill is her capacity to make policy impact seem like a lifestyle blog. In essence, Flynn warned the audience to watch for her next big move, which is probably going to be a TED Talk that secretly contains the launch codes for Salad Republic. According to Kirk, bless his over-caffeinated heart, her ultimate goal could be to popularize the idea of a lifetime First Lady, a cultural role that extends beyond the White House and leaves her etched in the public consciousness. It might be the real irony of the circumstance. Because of her as a threat, she seems like a really well-organized, ridiculously successful force who somehow juggles being a cultural icon and a master at 4D chess. If Michelle ever chooses to go back into politics, she should give Kirk and Flynn credit for the effective, if unintentional, PR campaign.